Are rules meant to be broken, or should they be followed at all costs? In this week's episode of the Chain Clankers Disc Golf Podcast, Quinn and Horatio are joined by the newest Chain Clanker member, Trent Forrester, and we all three debate whether or not Kristin Tartar deserved to have a rules violation called on her in the Champions Cup and break down the entire drama that happened at the Champions Cup with Kristin Tartar and her daughter and give our own takes on the matter. As well, in this episode, we also have a fantastic discussion about forehands and how you can improve your forehand, how to grip a forehand, and how to have a more accurate forehand. If you're a new disc golfer or a disc golfer who's been predominantly backhand and you want to try a forehand and you need a little bit of help with it, this is the episode for you, because in the beginning we are going to be exclusively talking about forehands and how you can improve your forehand, and then we get into the debate about the Champions Cup. As well, at the end of this episode, we debate, should tournaments be just pro and am divisions, or should they be broken up like they currently are? Make sure you stay tuned for that heated debate as well. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the Chain Clankers Disc Golf Podcast. If you'd like to support us more, we have just created a new Patreon page, patreon.com/chainclankers. Check it out. We've got 3 tiers with what we are hoping will provide you, the listeners, some value as well. And we would definitely appreciate to have your support over there. There will be a link in the description below. So make sure you go check it out. Let us know what you think. Maybe you want something added to it. We are all ears. Let us know. And hey, keep leaving those ratings and reviews over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We're getting dangerously close on Spotify to hitting that 100 review mark to get a giveaway going. I think we're sitting at about 80 at the time that I'm recording this. So thank you guys so much for all your support over there. We've got a giveaway going on our YouTube channel right now. So if you haven't checked it out, make sure you go check it out. We've got awesome videos coming out every single week over there. But without further ado, let's get into the episode right now.
This is Trent Forrester, and you are listening to the Chain Clankers Podcast.
All right, everyone, you have heard him on the intro. You have watched the YouTube videos with Trenton. Trenton is the newest Chain Clanker joining our team, the first addition to our team. Horatio, this is the first little bird that we've brought into our big, beautiful nest that we have created. Trenton, how are we doing tonight, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Had a nice day at work, ready to talk disc golf.
Pretty excited, like you're saying, first Chain Clanker. When we started this, we didn't really, think about, I guess, long-term or bringing on more little birds or whatnot, but who knows, and maybe in 5 years, it's just a whole Clanker squad.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
That'd be pretty fun. Somebody behind the studio right now who could have dealt with all of our tech difficulties before this. Wow. That would have been nice to have. So if you want to join the Clanker squad here in 3 years, you let me know right now over on Instagram. But hey, let's kind of get into the episode here. Trent, how did you first get into disc golf?
So, I always kind of knew about it. Saw the courses in my hometown. Some of my friends played. Never really got out to play. And then in college, I took a PE class, one of those prerequisites you got to have just to get a couple credit hours. We did disc golf there, and I was having fun doing that, but then it really didn't pick up until probably 2018. I went with my good buddy Matthew, a childhood friend, and I don't know. I guess he kind of gassed me up. I threw a pretty good forearm or sidearm, forehand, whatever you want to call it, and from then on, I kind of started playing more casually, probably once or twice a month. And then during the summer months only, though. And then when I got really hooked was 2020. I'm a COVID golfer, just like you guys. I call myself that. I've been playing a little bit longer. But 2020, I really, really got, hook, line, sinker. I played every weekend at least once since probably August of 2020. So can't get enough of it now. It's like all I want to do. So
yeah, that's really cool. You joke about, calling yourself COVID golfer, and whatnot. And Quentin tries to pull that same line with me sometimes. He likes to say, oh yeah, we both started playing during COVID, when he literally taught me how to play, and he'd already been playing for a while.
Whoa,
and so,
whoa.
whenever whenever he beats me, because I'm still, not quite being able to beat him easily or not. So whenever he beats me, yeah. So I just fall back on that he's been playing twice as long as I have. So
Hey, you can keep saying that, and I'll keep collecting my six packs. I'm okay with that.
You keep beating me too, and every time we put a sixer on the line, you said it in the other podcast the other day, but
I've been telling Horatio this also is that literally anytime somebody puts a six pack on the line, I come alive. That's when I play boring disc golf. I'm Paul Macbeth at WR Jackson third round. I who cares about the winning? You're scoring good, but you put a sixer on, I turn on the 16 down in me and just become alive. Is how I like to say it. But let's talk about you right now, Trenton. So why did you get into disc golf in that 2020? Like, obviously, I feel like a lot of people got into disc golf during the pandemic. I've been talking to a lot of people over on Instagram lately. They're kind of saying the same thing as well. But like, how were you able to actually get hooked into disc golf? What was it about disc golf that got you hooked in the first place? And how were you able to then continue to be hooked? And like, we're 2 years after that. Why are you still playing disc golf today?
yeah. So I guess what got me hooked is I'm very competitive. I started playing with a couple different buddies here in the local Wichita area, and they used to wipe the floor with me. I'd get whooped. I would get lucky to shoot. I'd play oak all the time with it and get lucky to shoot. I don't know. A good round for me was like 10 over over par back then, and I don't know. I guess I wanted to be able to beat them or at least compete. And then as I practiced and as I watched YouTube videos and everything, I just got hooked on getting better. I used to only throw forehands, and now I would say I trust my forehand and my upshot, but I don't really like all I work on now, or all I worked on when I really got into it was my backhand form. And that now that's like if I need to hit a tight line or if I need to do really anything besides maybe max distance, I'm going to my backhand. So I'm just hooked on the process of getting better and playing and watching the disc fly through the air like a lot of people say. I think it's one of the most beautiful things. Just I don't know why, but when you get a full flex shot or a nice little turnover, that big S curve, I just love it.
it's very interesting what you say, about starting out with the forehand and then moving on to backhand. I feel like a lot of people actually do that. I feel like at the beginning they're very comfortable with that sidearm, and to some people it comes more naturally than that weird backhand swing. But then once they figure out the backhand, I feel like it feels more accurate to a lot of people, and they go to that and they kind of leave the sidearm. Do you kind of regret, when you started going to that backhand, not using that sidearm as much? Do you think if you had kept, kind of doing both as consistently, that you would have a solid sidearm and a backhand?
I don't regret it. Pretty I still think I have a pretty good sidearm. I would say I don't like the word regret, I guess. I do think I went a little too heavy on the backhand and now my sidearm is a little bit lacking. Like I said, I don't trust it as much. I'm starting to get in. I've been working a lot with the justices and a felon on my upshots or even like the 250-foot, 300-foot holes, forehands if they're dogleg right or whatever. And I'm getting really comfortable again. It's just um, I don't know. That's a really good question. But no, I don't regret switching because I still think I have a pretty good sidearm. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know I've seen when you've thrown it, it definitely looks pretty good, comes out pretty clean. It's one of those things where I know when I took a couple of my buddies out for the first time, you know how it is with most disc golfers. Literally, their very first time, they're going to struggle unless you're Paul Macbeth or something like that. But one of my friends could not do the backhand to save his life, but he could slang a forehand. Man, I'm telling you what, he was doing really good. So that is kind of interesting that you also brought that up, Ratio. Did you ever feel that way at all? Did you feel like when you were first kind of getting into it that forehand was easier for you than the backhand?
No, no, my forehand has always been trash, and it's still I'm like barely. I barely like recently have started to kind of mess with it again, just because I feel like I need it. Um, and my buddy who I play with all the time, he throws a lot of sidearms, and I just recently started doing that, just super relaxed. like I don't do a step up, I don't do anything. I just walk up and I literally just flick my wrist, release the disc pretty flat, like on a little bit of hyzer, and I'm getting them to go, as far as he is, and he does like a whole run up and a whole swing with the arm and stuff. And on some holes, I'm out driving him, so that's super super exciting. And I can't wait until I put in the timing, get the timing right, and start to do a swing, because then there maybe could be a little bit more distance there, and that's super exciting because I love watching people throw sidearm, just how it comes out flat and like it goes really far, and you can double your shots. So yeah, but no, I wasn't like that at the beginning, but I also didn't play baseball. Usually a lot of those people that are natural with that sidearm at the beginning are usually baseball players or football players also, kind of, I guess.
My biggest issue with my sidearm is I started out with overstable, like really overstable discs. So I forehanded like a Ballista Pro was one of the first ones I had. I used to forehand. Well, I still forehand Felons. I forehand a Halo Wraith, which if anybody's thrown that, it's like, I don't know, it's ridiculously beefy. Um, and so now, like, I don't trust myself to sidearm. Well, I created a natural flex line with my sidearm, so everything kind of comes out a little bit anty. And so if I grab something remotely just stable or understable, it basically I turn it over into the ground. So I've been working on kind of like what you said, Horatio, trying to take my time and not be as like, I don't have to throw it as hard as I can to get it to go far. I just need to pay attention to the angle and just let the disc do the work and just give it the pace that it needs.
So like let's open that box up a little bit more, right? So like what are you doing in the field to accomplish that? What are you doing on the course? Like if I'm a new disc golfer and I'm trying to upgrade my forehand, like how can I do that?
So for me, it's been slowing down, like, and not trying to throw everything as hard as I can. It's like, um, I don't necessarily always do a standstill, but like especially on upshots, like I have started getting my hip set, everything how I want to be, and then even my back draw is a lot slower than if I'm off the tee on my upshots, right? So I'm just taking my time. I'm like, I look at the disc. I'm like, okay, I want it on an ante. Do I want it flat? And I started out with the angle I want it to be on. I draw it back nice and slow, almost like a slingshot, nice and slow, and then just slow and controlled. What does Danny, I think from DD say, smooth or slow is smooth and smooth is far. I'm kind of trying to do the same thing with my sidearm. And then when I'm on the tee, I just try not to throw it as hard as I can. And made a it's made a huge difference. I get about probably the same distance, and I feel like I can trust it a lot more than when it's like a 450-foot hole, and I used to only be able to throw sidearms. I can't throw it that far, but that used to be my longest shot, and I felt like I used to have to go up there and throw it as hard as I can. Well, now I think my form's getting better, and I don't need to throw it that hard, so it's just reminding myself not to just chuck it.
Yeah, it's definitely the same, as backhand. That's one of the main things we tell people is just to slow down. But, I feel like there's definitely a big difference between a standstill sidearm and, a tee, sidearm where you're teeing off. And mine's like somewhere between, it's not a standstill, it's not a run up, it's literally just kind of a walk up, just because I feel like there's like a little bit of movement and you kind of want to step into it. Whereas a standstill, you put kind of your weight on that back leg and you swing through and you swing forward. And on that walk up that I do really really slow allows me to focus and like get the timing perfectly. So on that last step, I rock that, pull that wrist back, and then I step into it, and that tiny tiny step, like just not like I'm walking. And on that, when I pull my wrist forward is when I take that step forward and kind of throw that little bit of momentum, that little bit of body weight into the shot, which is essentially what you're doing on a regular sidearm, where you're doing a run up, you're doing that step, and on that last one, you're stomping your foot and throwing everything you got into that elbow to rock it forward. Um, so yeah, I think that's been the biggest game changer. So anyone that's struggling, or if you're that person that's throwing those overstable stuff, just stop. It's working out for you, and it's a good shot to have. Um, but I would say, this is the sign that you needed to stop doing that, because it's going to hurt your game in the long run. In the sidearm, you're going to improve quicker if you learn how to throw a disc on a flat release, on a hyzer release, and get it to stand up. I know when I do throw sidearms right now, I'm trying to work on them. I literally have one disc that I pull out to throw, and it's like a 167 Wraith. So, it's just overstable enough that it's going to come back, and it's I'm not going to overturn it, but it's lightweight and, it's Wraith. So it's just not too overstable to where I can get it to maybe stand up a little bit or do kind of that line and stand up and fly out and not completely just, hyzer out. So it gives me that distance. So, I would say, if you're trying to improve, find one disc that you're comfortable with, probably something lighter. That's going to help you get that confidence and get that motion. And then you can worry about, moving up. Because then you know that all you have to focus on is that motion and not the disc, and just pick one disc and just stick to that one. Whenever you go for those sidearm shots, just throw that one single disc, and that way you can learn it and you can correct. Because when you're throwing multiple discs, you have to kind of change your angle. So it's just a lot easier just to focus on one.
I agree. And one other thing that I kind of figured out through my little sidearm journey, I don't know if this is correct. I don't even know if I've seen it on like YouTube videos that I used to watch, but I have a disc and I have a bunch of discs right behind me. But anyways, I have one right here. So I used to kind of keep my wrists like, a little wiggly. And I've noticed if I not necessarily cock my wrist back, but I'm just doing it because you can actually see it. But like when you're lining up your shot, almost have your wrist basically, I'm just going to call it tight. You just want it. I don't, if it's loose, I don't have as much control, I feel like. So I almost just tilt my wrist back. Kind of another way to think of it is like you're holding like the tension of holding like a cup of coffee is a good way to think about it. And then when you come through, your wrist isn't floppy and I noticed because I used to have a little bit of wobble when I released. I noticed that it got rid of that wobble because it's my wrist isn't all loosey goosey. It's tight and ready to go. And then naturally, as the momentum comes, your wrist is going to flick through. So that's been another game changer for me as far as when I was learning my sidearm.
So let's take another step, right? Like, pick that disc back up for you. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to watch this. But like, could you explain maybe how, especially pretty good for like the audio listeners, like, could you explain how to actually grip a forehand like disc? Like, how should I be holding the disc to even throw forehand in the first place?
Yeah, so I'll show the camera for the video people, but basically, hopefully my phone number's not on there. Anyways, basically, you take the disc and put it between your pointer finger and your thumb and like push it back into the V or the flesh of your thumb right there. And you want it to be tight on the flesh of your thumb. Here, I can show you from this side. You want it to be tight in there. And then basically the way I hold is I stack my middle finger and my pointer finger on the inside rim. And then I put my thumb on the flight, like right on the edge of the flight plate, almost where the flight plate meets the, I don't know, would you call that the bevel or the edge under the disc? And then the key for me is to have it tight in my hand because that will help reduce the wobble that I was talking about when you release. And then, just you don't want to like grip it and squeeze it like it's your first time driving when you're, 15 years old and you're scared, white knuckle. You just want it nice and firm in your hand so you have control. And then, like I said, cock, I don't want to say cock your wrist back. Put a tension in your wrist and it happens to go backwards. And then, almost like I said, like you're holding a cup of coffee, and then just do a nice and easy follow through throw, and your wrist will naturally just pop through like it should. And then at the end, a lot of baseball people, and I did it because I played baseball. You always rolled your wrist because you're trying to put spin on the ball. Um, you want to almost keep your palm, like when you release the disc, you want to keep your follow through your palm facing the sky. That'll keep you from rolling your wrist over. It's kind of weird to think about, but that's how I do it. And because your wrist will pop, and then for me, it keeps the disc flat or level or however I want to throw it. So it's whatever works for everybody, but that's what's helped me, or that's what I think has helped me anyway. So
Yeah, and I know another thing that, my buddy struggled with for a while, and on times, his sidearm would be good, and then other times he'd do it everything the same, and it would just come out super high or on a hyzer, and he would just get upset and, kind of figured out that he was doing everything, and he was flicking his wrist and stuff, but he was stopping there. Like, so he would come through with his arm swing, and after he flicked the disc, he would kind of just stop right there in front of him. He wouldn't follow through. And so, what he figured out is he'd flick it and then basically throw through his body after the disc is gone, just like backhand, and throw through his body and let his arm just completely wrap around, with that wrist up and go all the way through, keeping that motion all the way through, allowed him to, to get that disc, to get that extra power, extra snap. And, that allowed for his disc to come out cleaner, not as much hyzer because he was, doing the full motion as opposed to when he was just finishing halfway, snapping. It's pretty much, like if you're stopping your throw halfway, was causing to pretty much come out early and on a bunch of hyzer. So I definitely say look at that if you're having that issue with your sidearm.
So another question I have, if I think a common mistake that happens on a lot of forehands, especially if you're new or if you're struggling, is throwing him pretty much like straight up and then they just hyzer out immediately. Like there's no really like that push, you know what I'm talking about? It's literally like backhand, like when you just throw it nose up and it just goes up and comes back down. I feel like that's also a common mistake that happens on forehand. Could you maybe explain a little bit how to correct that?
My brother-in-law just came out and played with me. He's played like once before, but we went and played Thomas Park in Salina over the weekend, and he walked it with me and threw some shots. When you're first starting out, it's never pretty. It wasn't bad. He had a good time. It didn't do what he wanted it to do, but he was doing the same thing. And what I had to tell him, or what I would tell anybody when I'm watching him throw, especially if it goes up in the air and then hyzer's out right away, is like Horatio said, make sure you're following through, because that's going to be the biggest thing. If you just like karate chop, the disc is gonna, I mean, I don't know, do go up in the air, go straight in the ground. The follow through is going to be the biggest thing. But I also was telling him and anybody else I played with that's brand new, is whether you're backhand or forehanding, it's either way. Um, Try to keep the disc level with the earth is kind of how I explain it. So like for the video people, you can, this is obviously the earth, not obviously, this is the earth, this is the disc. If you're throwing it like this and then wondering why it's, hooking right, and you're throwing it on hyzer as you're learning. And at the beginning, I didn't know what hyzer was or anhyzer. I would just play disc golf. So I focused on throwing it flat, but that was the biggest thing for me. And then when you release it, like Horatio was saying, um, a lot of them go up in the air, just because I think that's just, I did it. I mean, when you follow through naturally at the beginning, your arm just kind of flails up high. Focus on doing the same thing, like Horatio said, with your follow through. Keep it flat and level with the earth, and you'll probably see a lot further shots and a lot straighter shots. Won't be the distance you want right away, but I guarantee you it won't go 30 feet in the air and then just tank down 80 or 50 feet in front of you. So
That's a great point. I know one of the first videos on sidearms or stuff I watched is just to kind of pretend that you're throwing that disc on a table. You're trying to slide it across a table. Granted, if you're throwing like a Spike Heiser sidearm, you're not going to throw it on a table. It's going to be that level plane that you were talking about. And then also another thing is kind of flicking through your target point, or no, if you have like a point where you're throwing at, to get that to come out stronger and more direct, is instead of just focusing on throwing it out there, throwing through it. And almost like if you're like you're trying to get the disc there, like if it was, I guess, like on a spider web connected to you, or like on a rope, and you're trying to flick it and throw it to that point. If you throw towards that, like you're throwing it forward, it's a flick. But if you're throwing with that forward motion, it's going to come out more straight and definitely on a straighter line.
right, I do the classic aim for a tree and hope I miss tactic. Throw it through the tree, and they're 90% air. So
Yeah, I think my discs would beg to differ on that one. Cool. Well, hey, I think this was a really good discussion on forehands. If you are trying to learn more about forehands, if you've been struggling with forehands, I think there's a lot of good tips that we just covered. If you have more questions, obviously feel free to comment them down below on the YouTube video for this, and we'll answer, as well as, our DMs are incredibly open on Instagram. I would say that 99% of people get a response, so feel free to always message us on Instagram. I want to move this episode in another direction now, and I want to talk about the latest controversy on the Disc Golf Pro Tour. What I'm talking about here, it comes from the Champions Cup on the FPO division. Paige Pierce and Kristin Tartar battled it out literally the entire tournament, the last 2 rounds. And the big controversy is that Kristin had her 9-year-old daughter with her, and sometime before the first 9 were over, I believe what I saw on Twitter was it was like hole 4 or something like that, was there was a phone call to Paige Pierce's caddy, and they then removed the daughter, the TD did, from the card and made her have to go into the gallery with, however many other people there were there. And the what I've gotten from the information is that they gave her a quiet sign, so at least she was able to be close to the card. She didn't have to be fully, engulfed by 100+ people. But nonetheless, more news came out, and the person who actually called this rules violation was Elaine King, who's the color commentator for the Disc Golf Network. She's also sits on the board for the PDGA. And so I guess my big gripe here, I think where the controversy comes is, the PDGA, I'm not even going to say really this is PDGA's fault at all. Rules should be enforced. Horatio, you and I, we've been on the podcast before. We've said, hey, enforce the rules. I'm all good with enforcing the rules. I think Kristin Tartar is also all cool with the rules being enforced. She's even admitted that she should have followed the rules. I get that. I think the big bone to pick here is the fact that this was called a rule violation, but yet how many memes are there? Nico taking over 30 seconds and that doesn't get called. How many foot faults are there literally on coverage that don't get called? How many mandatories are missed that don't get called? How many other literal violations that affect the game that are not called, but yet this was called? And really the big bone for me personally is that it's coming from somebody who is commentating on the event. I think that is unprofessional and not okay, and is a slippery slope that is awful for the sport. Imagine if Tony Romo, broadcaster for the NFL, was doing a Chiefs game and he saw the Chiefs were offsides or had 12 men on the field last play. What happens when that happens? They're like, oh yeah, that's a penalty. The refs missed it. He doesn't call the coach for the other team and be like, hey, you need to tell the officials that there was an offsides on the last play, and then they do something about it. Right? That is preposterous to me. That is not okay. So either A, she continues to commentate and she is not allowed to do any rule enforcement, or B, pull her out of the booth and she can do whatever she wants. That's where I sit on the subject right now. I will have more, but I know I've been going for a little bit, so I want to give you guys an opportunity to give your thoughts on the situation, give a rebuttal, and we'll kind of just debate this out. A little debate night action here.
Yeah, so I know, like, from what I did see, and we might see more stuff come out, and there's always two sides to one story, and it's not always what it seems, and we only, as audience, we only get a certain percentage of what actually is happening or going on. But from what I saw was that Elaine King was being nice and looking out for Kristin Tatar, and instead of going to the TD, which she could have, or going to someone else or to Paige or someone else directly and telling them, she went to a caddy, someone that wasn't completely involved, but somebody that was there just to keep it kind of, I think, hush hush, or like to keep it more calm, and being like, hey, she shouldn't be doing this. And it was kind of like I don't want to see her to get disqualified over this, especially when they're battling. And they're not really, at that point, it wasn't really who was going to win. They're battling for this championship. I don't want to see her get disqualified for something silly. Her knowing the rules, and if she knows the rules and she's watching live, then everybody else knows that rule, and someone else might have done something about it. So from what I saw is she was just looking out for her and was like, hey, you guys should give her a heads up that her kid, per the rules, whatever, should not be on the card with her, and somebody should let her know. and let her take care of it before someone steps in and disqualifies her. And so, I think that's what I saw. And maybe, that's not the case, but maybe it is the case. I like to think that that is kind of what happened. I can't imagine Elaine King was, oh, I'm going to do something to step in so Paige Pierce will win. Um, that's kind of what I understood. And if that's the case, then I feel like that was nice of her. More people would have been mad if nothing had happened and then TD came and let's say she won and then someone filed a complaint afterwards and they're like, well, we're actually stripping you of the title because you had an illegal, person on your card kind of thing. People would have been even more upset. They took care of it. They allowed her to fix the issue, let her keep playing. I don't think that's the reason she lost. She missed, putts. That's her. She was able to continue playing, 9 more holes because I think they did it at hole like 9 or something. She was able to continue playing just fine. So we can't blame her losing on that. So she was able to keep playing and still contend for the title as opposed to being DQ'd.
Trent, if you don't mind, let me jump in real quick just because I have the tweet here. So the tweet from the literal tournament director states, so there's a question. Somebody says, quote, I'm honestly confused on why it mattered so much. It wasn't going to cost any strokes or disqualification. I understand that it's in the rule book, but I don't know. It just seems like a lame situation. Another Twitter user says, from what I understand, it could have resulted in a DQ. And then the literal tournament director responds and says, absolutely false. There's nothing in the rule book that states it would be a DQ. At the worst, it would have been a warning. As TD, I'm the only person who can DQ someone. Not only did I not consider it, the very notion was never discussed with Kristin. The same Twitter user responds back and says, appreciate the clarification. Seemed to be a lot of confusion out there on the repercussions of the rule in question. The tournament director then says again, I can't control false narratives and other actions. All I can control is exactly what I controlled, ensure the rules were followed, and most importantly, make sure her daughter is safe and still able to be as close to the mom as possible. So here's my kind of gripe. Now that we know that it would not have resulted in a disqualification, I don't personally think Elaine King is coming at this for being nice or being thoughtful. That's my own personal opinion, because if she would have done it on the very first hole and she would have texted the tournament director. Because if you're on the board of the PDJ, if you're on whatever rule committee board that she's on, and she's genuinely worried about the rules, then why are you texting somebody's caddy, the competitor's caddy? Why aren't you texting Sarah Hokum's caddy? Why aren't you texting Owen Scoggins' caddy? Why are you texting Paige Pierce's caddy to handle the situation? Text Kristin Tartar. Literally the DGN has Terry Miller on site. Why is he not the one who's being contacted to then remedy the situation or something like that? Like, why is it Paige Pierce's caddy? So for me, the whole process that she went through was very unprofessional, very wrong, creates a slippery slope for disc golf in general. And it should have been called on hole 1. She should have been like, because I remember I had to stop watching the live after the 3rd hole, I believe. So I missed live when this actually happened. But I remember her saying something along the lines of her daughter is with her. Either her or the Ian, I think, said that the daughter was there with her, and so they clearly knew she was there, clearly could see that she was walking with her. So why did it take 4 holes for this to become an issue, or however long it took for it to become an issue? So that just kind of fuels my fire, my not necessarily conspiracy, but my wheels are turning. My thoughts are going here. Trent, why don't you weigh in?
I didn't realize I watched a lot of the FPO coverage. I definitely missed that happening. I did not catch when, Kristin started, or Kristen's daughter, or any of it. I didn't realize that all happened. I saw the tweet afterwards. Quentin, you and I have talked about it a little bit. I think I have to agree. The commentator reaching out to the caddy of her direct competitor, who literally they're tied or neck and neck, whatever. That is an interesting situation. Like you said, I mean, Terry Miller's on the course. I mean, she probably knows half the staff, maybe not half the staff. Obviously, she doesn't know the volunteers, but she knows a lot of the staff that's there, running the tournament. And I just thought it probably could have been handled definitely if she's, like you said, Quentin, if she's, knows the rules. Obviously, she knows the rules, but she knows them that well that she should have realized. I'm not saying she should have realized. Kristin realized that she should have known the rules as well. So, both parties or every party, I think, is a little bit at fault here. Kristin could have known the rules, like she stated in her Twitter post. Elaine could have handled it a little bit differently. I think overall, the PDGA and the TD and everyone did the right thing by letting the daughter obviously carry the quiet sign and walk with her mom still. But I couldn't imagine being a 9-year-old or however old she is and in a foreign country. I was walking with my mom, and then I had to, granted, she's still right there, but I have to go stand in the crowd with some strangers or, some volunteer who seems nice, but I don't know. This is kind of weird. I couldn't imagine being in that situation. And Kristin did play great still. We're never going to know like how much mentally it affected her, but obviously there was a lot of pressure on the last hole. Who knows? That might have tied in a little bit to it, but she also had a 50-footer she had to make to force a playoff, right? Or maybe it wasn't that far, 40, 50-footer. I don't know. I think it could have been handled differently. I thought Kristin's response to it was fantastic. She took ownership, which any great athlete, I think, does that. I gained a ton of respect. I was legit heartbroken when she lost because I was rooting for her pretty good. I was wanting her to win that, but I don't know. I think the whole situation is going to open a lot of eyes to that rule, and is it even really reasonable? If said person, regardless of age, if the person that's caddying in your family, whatever, knows the rules, is being quiet when they're asked to be quiet, not causing a scene, what does it matter if it's a 9-year-old or a 30-year-old? As long as they're following the rules and being respectful of the competitors, I think they should be able to carry the bag or whatever she was doing for her mom or for any disc golfer, any pro or any player that has a caddy. So
Yeah, so I'll jump in real quick. Again, sorry. I just want to get two clarification pieces out before you go, Horatio, just because I know somebody in the comments is going to be like, oh, you're not paying attention. Here's the rule. The rule 3.05.b states a caddy is a person who carries a player's equipment or provides other assistance during the round. Players may designate one caddy at a time during their round. A caddy must be at least 13 years of age and must comply with the same official rules of disc golf and competition manual as their player. As the player must follow, including dress code, although the caddy need not be a PDGA member nor certified official. And so she was 9 years old. The daughter is 9 years old. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up real quick, because I did just do a quick search, is that Elaine King she is on the board of directors for the PDGA. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear, because I know I said I had thought she was, but like I said, I just wanted to make sure that's clear. Sorry, go ahead, Horatio.
I don't know, besides not doing anything about it and just kind of letting her, I guess, break the rule at that point. And then you would have also had mad people, talking about, oh, it could have been handled better, taking away the whole Elaine King thing, stepping in. If it would have been somebody else and brought up or whatnot, the only situation where I think it could have been handled better is, I guess, just leaving her there and letting her finish with her mom on her, with her. But then you're 100% breaking a rule. And then it's like, okay, how serious are we about our rules? How serious do we want to be taken? And then, so I don't think, as far as handling it, I don't know what you could have done differently. But also, if Kristin Tartar, if they had done it, everything happened the way it did. No one knew about it until it was over. Kind of, really, the stuff started coming out. If Kristin Tartar had won, nobody would care. People would have been like, "Oh, that's kind of odd and kind of weird," but nobody would care. Quentin cares a lot because he's a huge Kristin Tartar fan, and a lot of the people that are upset are huge Kristin Tartar fans. If she had won, we would not be having this conversation. But because she lost, people are upset and talking about it and want a reason to blame for, Paige winning. And it's kind of, I feel it sucks for Paige because it's taken away from her win, because it's all this bad mumbo jumbo, because they weren't head to head the entire tournament. Kristin Tartar was ahead, first round or so. Paige had a bad first or second round, and then she like completely came back and was able to come back and compete for the win. So I definitely think, yeah, it was weird and odd, but it's definitely, I feel like a huge part of it is because she lost is why we're having this conversation.
I agree with the fact that you're saying if she had won, would the conversation be having on the level that it was happening? Probably not, to be completely honest. And I'll also be completely honest. Do I have a horse in this race? Absolutely. I like Kristin Tatar more than I like Paige Pierce. I'm not going to deny that. You're 100% correct. But what I am going to be, fighting for here is that I think, and no one will know except for Kristin, you can't tell me, and I'll ask you, both of you have children. Imagine that your child was 9 years old and you are competing in a major championship. And now not only do you have to focus on that, you now have to be like, wow, my son or daughter is now in a crowd of 100 people, 200, 300, 400 people. And what happens if I turn around and the next second they're gone? Right? You know what I'm saying? Like I don't have it. I can't imagine what that feeling is like. I'm not making an excuse. I'm not saying that's why she lost, but I'm saying to a certain degree that had to have been in the back of her head. It definitely would have been in the back of my head. And so I want to go back to kind of what you were saying, the beginning of your argument there, Horatio, is that like I think the take is not the best in my eyes because I think that at the end of the day, Elaine King should not have been the person who had called this. And I don't think it makes a difference. And you're saying that if this rule isn't followed, then we can't take disc golf seriously and rules aren't going to be followed. Who cares? Rules literally are not followed already. Why is this the rule that we decide to care about? We decide to care about somebody's 9-year-old kid, but we don't care about Nico Lacastro taking 50 seconds.
This is the one that we're talking about right now. I don't care about Nikki. This is the one that we're talking about. It was a major. It was on main stage. It was live. It's what people are looking at it. If it was brought up by somebody and it was made the attention of people, and then it was like, all right, what are you guys going to do about it? And tournament director was like, nah, just let her continue. It's fine. We just won't let it happen next time. But like Kristin said, I should have known the rules. So how you're talking about that anxiety, we don't know what that did to her mental state. Like she said, as a professional who has been playing for a very long time, and you have to take a test to be on the pro tour because you're saying that the rules. She knew whether she likes it or not. She knew that she was breaking the rule by bringing her daughter, so she should have gotten someone to watch her before the round. There's she has friends that came with her from Estonia that could have watched her. She willingly brought her 9-year-old daughter, knowing that she maybe didn't think about it, or maybe didn't think anyone would say anything about it, but she did. So partially it is her fault. It's not completely, yes, we can blame Elaine King, yes, totally, but the fact that it was brought up, I'm saying something had to be done about it because it is a rule.
No. Okay, so I'm not saying you're wrong. I agree that she agrees she took full ownership for it. But what I'm saying, the point of my argument comes down to is the tournament director says he wasn't going to DQ her. At best, he was going to give her a warning, which in most rules, like if you take too much time, you get a warning. You do it again, you get a stroke, right? So it would have been the same thing. You brought your daughter to this tournament, it's a warning. If you bring her to the next round or tournament or whatever, okay, it's going to be a stroke. Nowhere in the rule does it state she can be DQ'd, so that whole entire argument can go out the door. And I think it
Kristin said
does.
that. Kristin said in her post, she's like, I almost, with the possibility of being disqualified. She said that.
Yes, she might have said that, but the literal tournament director said later he's the only person that can DQ somebody, and he said he wasn't even thinking about it. He wasn't even going to do it. So like that probably was on the back of her mind. She was like, "Oh wow, I might get DQ'd for this." Maybe somebody had been floating that around, but the guy who makes the final decision said he wasn't going to do it. He wasn't even thinking about doing it. So really what I want to get at real quick, I know we've been going on this for a long time, and I'll let you guys get one more response, and I promise I'll shut up and not repeat again. But it's the slippery slope effect. Elaine King should not be the one calling these things. Either get her out of the booth, or she shouldn't be calling the things she's calling. And B is that I think if this rule matters, Nico Lacastro should have a penalty called on him every single event, and everyone who foot faults should have a penalty called on them. That means Elaine King, the next time she sees somebody take more than 30 seconds, or the next time somebody steps on a disc or misses a mandatory or whatever, I want her to text the direct competitor's caddy and let them know that there was a rules violation and that the group needs to come to a consensus and give that person a warning.
That's different though, because you can't use video to penalize people. It's a live sport, and just like soccer or other stuff, and they recently started doing it to like for penalties or whatnot. During rounds, the only people that can call somebody on foot faults are the people on the cards, and they have to do it right then and there. You can't even go from hole 7, do a foot fault, and then go to hole 8 and be like, you know what? I just remembered you had a foot fault. You can't do that. It has to be right there and then, and you cannot use video. This scenario, it was on live coverage and it was continuous. It wasn't like one hole she did it and then didn't. It was something that was happening and everyone could see it. So like those are completely different rules being broken, and we can't do nothing about that, because I think that's more of the community and the vibe that is around disc golf, and I think is not going to change for another 10 years. They're a family, and they're used to traveling together, staying in the same houses, eating together, like celebrating holidays together. So they don't want to make cards awkward, because it's kind of like your coworkers, and call people on foot faults. So I think that's why that whole reason, and that bad, people not calling people on foot faults or time, I think that's a problem. I think that's a separate problem, and it's not going to go away until there's more people in the field. People don't know each other. It's more competitive and it's more cutthroat, and they're like, I don't know this guy, I don't care, but he's competing to take my win, foot fault. And I think we'll see it more then. But until all these people kind of age out that have been playing together for 30 years, we're not going to see that. But that's totally different than from this scenario. So I just want to make that clear, that those arguments are completely different.
Okay, sorry, Trent. I'm literally the worst. This is the debater coming out in me, where every time somebody makes an argument, I write down my response to it and then have to give it. I promise this is it. I will let you talk and I will move on. I promise. But I have to get this out. It's literally the debater in me. Is that Elaine King, was she there? She literally wasn't there. She was using video, literally watching on TV to call the rule in. So there's no link differential there.
You
You know what
can't
I'm
use
saying?
video for foot faults, or
Yes,
like,
exactly. So then she shouldn't be able to use video to call this. She shouldn't you know what I'm saying? Like she's watching it on the video. She's not Terry Miller, the disc golf guy who's out there. She's not the caddy. The caddy wasn't going to call it on her until she called her and told her to do it. That's a thing that I physically cannot get over, and I can continue to go on and on about that. But I agree with what you're saying though. On the other half of that though, that people don't want to call rules violations on each other, which is just another call for why we need course marshals out there and referees who are going to call rules violations on people, because we're never going to have rules actually enforced, like foot faults, like time, all those things, without those marshals out there. I promise I'm done. Trenton, go, and Horatio, you can respond if you want. I'm putting myself on mute.
All I'm gonna say, I think you guys kind of hammered that one out pretty good. All I'm gonna say is, in regards to I mean, you brought it up already, but the field marshals or the referees, and obviously it's a manpower thing, probably hard to do. You got to find people that want to do it and want to be the bad guy that's calling Paul Macbeth on you know, a, a 32-foot circle one foot fault. Anyways, you got to find. I mean, the only way to solve, maybe not the only way, but a very legitimate way to solve this problem would be to have 18 referees that walk with each card, or maybe it's more than 18, however many people you need to have a referee that walks with each card the entire round and watches everybody throw and watches everybody, you know, warm up or not warm up, get set up and, you know, whatever it might be. And that's the person that's calling these penalties. And then it could even be like, okay, the referee called a foot fault. Maybe it's not like a done deal. Maybe it's like the rest of the card mates are like, did you guys, because I mean, how many times have you seen, even in our little intermediate tournaments or rec tournaments, you see someone call a foot fault, be like, or you see someone do a foot fault, you're like, I'm not going to call it. But if there's a referee who's like, that was a foot fault, did anybody else on the card see it? And if one person says yes, that's the answer. And if everyone says, no, it's fine, then they move on. But the referee is the guy who's taken out, he's almost like he or she is like the icebreaker. It's It's like that's technically a foot fault, and whether or not it's 100% what the ref says or it has to be seconded, maybe that could be something if you have the manpower and the people to do it. But anyways, that probably takes actually having paid referees and probably down the line a little bit. But
Yeah, no, I think caddies, pro tour are like people that they have to know the rules. Like it's kind of part of the thing, and so I think that would maybe be a thing. I think like that rule said they don't have to be a PDJ member. So maybe going forward for the pro tour, or at least for them, um, even just to be a caddy, one of the requirements being that you have to not only be a member, but you also have to take a test that you know the rules. Because then, maybe I could maybe see a caddy calling or saying something about, them being kind of the referees for the whole card. Because everybody has caddies. And then, I mean, you don't really have to pay them or whatnot. But as far as, rebuttal, I don't have it. I'm done. I think, people are just being bad losers. It's really lame that, Lane King, as an observer, stepped in. I don't think it was her business to do so. Um, and hopefully going forward, TDs are they put some more rules, not rules into place, but just practices. But I think she brought it to the attention, and because it was brought to the attention, they had to do something about it because people knew about it, and we weren't there. We didn't know how it went down. It might have been she might have texted the caddy, and Paige's caddy might have been like, "Hey, this is weird," and being Paige, the person she is, competitor, I feel like she's still like a really good person. She might have been like that's weird, like I don't care or whatever, like I doubt that Paige was like, oh, take her kid away right now, make it happen, let's go. So we weren't there, we don't know what the situation went down like. They might have tried to keep it hush hush, and then maybe she told someone else or whatever. So I don't like to think, and especially if this isn't going to come out for another week, maybe some other information will come out in the meantime, and we'll just seem like total dummies. So, I think it's just a bad situation. But mostly, yeah, if she had won, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you summed up there at the end is pretty good, and I'm glad that I could get you to agree that on the Elaine part. So I will.
A lot of comments I was seeing is I don't know, a lot of people don't like Elaine King. I don't know why. But the commentating, they're not a fan. So I don't think people were too they were ready to jump on her. So I don't know. Maybe we don't see her anymore.
I mean, this is my. I did watch all of the third round, I think, live, and a little bit of the second, and obviously a little bit of the fourth. And man, I'll tell you what, guys, whew, the commentating still is not very good. Either it's calling out the wrong discs or constantly saying that was a good shot or that was a bad shot, and then they get up to the shot and they're like, "Oh no, this is perfect," or "It's terrible." Like, just I don't know. There's a lot that I think could be fixed. But we're done. I'm done. I'm not going to go on anymore because I know I could. Trenton, transition us. What's your hot take? Let's keep the debates rolling.
all amateur divisions, well, there should just be one amateur division, in my opinion. You pay like 50% of the field anyways, rec, intermediate, advanced. Why not just put them all in the same division? And then, I don't know, say there's in a tournament of 90 people like there is around here, there's 45, 50 amateurs. If you finish in the top 25, you cash. If you're like the top 5, you're probably close to being able to go to MPO. If you're consistently winning or top 2, 3, you could probably jump up to MPO. But, and then, well, I say one entire amateur division. I think there should be, for the people that are really there for like, I'm trying to see where I compete or where I land against my peers type of like 100% competition, one amateur division. Now, I think there could be like you could call it rec still. There could be a division or maybe no PDGA number or brand new player, like just starting in the last 6 months, like a division for the people that are just starting, so that it's a little bit more friendly or catered to the people that are just starting, kind of want to check out a tournament, get a little more competitive, but they also might just be interested in the players pack. That's my hot take. Get rid of rec, intermediate, and advanced. Make those three one division, and then still have the same payout for the whole division. And then I think you have 3 divisions still: MPO, amateur, and we'll call it rec just for sake of I don't feel like thinking of something new. And rec is strictly like 6 months or newer PDGA if you don't want to play in the amateur division, or like I'm just here for the players pack and to have fun with a couple of my buddies that decided to sign up.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. That's something I've been saying forever because it just doesn't make any sense. You look at tournament results, and the results just don't make any sense. A lot of times they're like copy and paste, depending on the course is. The scores from intermediate and advanced will be similar, and like kind of sometimes the scores from rec and intermediate will be the same. So it's like, what's even the point? But some people, they can play in certain divisions and be able to compete better because of that. So yeah, I think having a newer, just only AMs, and then even a division below that for just novices or newer players. And then you make it to where maybe, for tournaments, it's like $5 or $10, like just a fee to play. But then there's like very little to no incentive for winning. Because then you kind of take away the people wanting to play that, because then there's really no point to win in that rec division and beat all the newer people. Because you're not going to get anything out of it. You're kind of just playing to partake in the tournament, and maybe you don't even get a players pack, because you're new, you're only paying $5-10. You're just paying to see how you do in the tournament. And that way people that know they're good or know that they can compete, they're not going to want to play in that lower division, because they're paying kind of just for nothing, which kind of just like doing a league night. So you could get the same out of that. And so the people that will stay there are people that are solely playing just for fun, and winning is be cool, but I don't think it would be as competitive, because we even do one league night here or Millbrook, and sometimes they'll combine rec and intermediate, and I'm like, that's cool. And like last time we went, we cashed, but I'm like, that's super unfair to the people playing in rec division, because they're paying as much as we are, but they can't cash. They're competing against the people that are no crap, saying, hey, we're playing an intermediate because we feel we're too good for the rec division, so we don't want to sandbag. So we're playing in that intermediate division, but we're still competing to take the rec players cash, and which is what's happening. And so the rec players, they're paying, but they literally can't win unless they have a hot round, or they're rec players who should be moved up to intermediate. Um, and so, they're talking about having, let's say, a tournament for simple math, a tournament where you have 90 players, and then you just do one division for AMs. I think that you could even, once it's finished, you could even break it up in 30% or whatever, break it up into three, and still do, at the end, post tournament, do a advanced, intermediate, and rec payout. So you take the top 30 players, and then 31 to 60 or whatever, and then 61 to 90 or whatever that is. And then so first, whoever's at the top, that's going to be your advanced players. And the top 5 of those are going to get cashed out. But then you break that off at that 31 point, and then so player 31 to 60, 31 player will fall into the intermediate bracket, and maybe they cash, and then it's broken down, and then the very bottom, because it's gonna fall by scores, so you're not gonna have an incentive to sandbag. If you play bad, you're just going to fall towards the bottom. It's going to hurt your score, your rating, but you'll have the incentive to play as best as possible, because you'll be towards the top. And then so cash payout would be higher for that top portion, even if they pay out, that middle 30%, and then the bottom 30%, if that makes sense.
I was agreeing with you for a whole lot of the argument until the end. And for me, it's the like, let's take you as a prime example. You don't have a PDGA number. Whatever rating you get does not matter, because it is not sticking with you. In a flight system like that, what is stopping you from finishing, let's say, 25th in advance and not cashing, and I don't know, missing a couple of tap ins to bump yourself to 31st, and then you win all of intermediate? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's stopping you at that point?
because you wouldn't know, like you wouldn't know in like how many. It depend on the tournament. Like you'd have to be doing some high level math during
It's
your
just like
round.
checking your scores during the round. You just hit
Yeah,
leaderboard and it'll show you where you're at.
I guess, but I mean, you'd have to be a really like cruddy player. That's no different than now. That's no different than now going out on UDisc and playing around and saying like, and by yourself, and you missed a putt, and then I like, oh, I would have made that though. I would have made that, and giving yourself a three, like just being a crappy player. That's like the what ifs, like missing putts on purpose to fall into the lower bracket. You can't fix crappy, unethical people with certain stuff. You're always going to have that. That's an issue. But I feel like that bracket system would incentivize everyone to play as best as possible because they're just going to fall wherever they fall. And then if you fall, you'll know where. If you play 4 tournaments and you're constantly in the middle, that's kind of you're just an intermediate player.
I think the bracket system would work if you couldn't see what your score was. If it was completely blind to what your score was and where you were placed, then yeah, you probably have incentive to do as best as you can. But also, if you're like, I know if I'm keeping score in my head and like, let's say I'm like +7 and I came into the round like 20th, I was like, well, I gotta be getting pretty close to 31 at this point. Maybe I'll just take like a 6 on this next hole. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think I see both sides. I do see the yes, there is, it can limit potential sandbagging, but I can also see the other side where it increases sandbagging when you pay out like that. Like, I think if you have let's say it's 90 people and you pay out the top 30, top 45, whatever it is, I think that's the best way to not sandbag, because you're constantly trying to get towards the top. Because it's one of those things where initially I was like, no, there should be the separate divisions. But how many times have you played a tournament and somebody in rec has beaten somebody in advanced? You know what I'm saying? So like, if everyone was in one division and you paid out the top 45% or whatever, that fixes that. You get paid based on, and you're just playing AM, so it doesn't matter what division you're in. If you cash, you cash.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I like your idea, Horatio. I don't know that the payout should go that way. I think like breaking it out to like the top 30% is advanced player. Like you're technically an advanced player if you're in the top 30% of, over 3 tournaments. If you're in the top 30%, you're an advanced amateur. If you're in the, 33 to 66%, you're an intermediate. And if you're below 33 or below, you're a rec level intermediate. Like we'll say it's a new system. In the old system, you would have been and you should have been playing rec in the old system. We don't have the old system anymore. If this was actually a thing, theoretically thinking. But I would agree with Quentin. It's kind of like um, it's like the payout thing that they were talking about for this major. Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to bring up a whole nother thing, but paying the last cash more, it doesn't. I don't. I don't know. It doesn't incentivize. I don't know. To me, it doesn't incentivize you to do better because first place. I've seen a couple things where the difference if they would have paid it like they normally have, first place would have made like 7 grand more than what they did if they would have just and last place would have made like $650 or $700. So it's like a $300 difference, which a $300, yes, is a lot for a touring pro, but would they rather, get fifth place and make 3 grand more? Or I don't know. I don't want to go down that slippery slope. I'm just saying, I think all divisions, all intermediate, or sorry, all amateur divisions should be one solid block because like you said, I've seen intermediates getting second place in advanced, but they're actually getting third in intermediate because people are playing lower or higher. Maybe they're not playing lower. They just had a really good round or two. The idea is cool, paying out in 3 different divisions, but I don't know that it would work well, kind of like Quentin was saying. But it would be nice to know, like it would be kind of cool to give yourself a technical level of where you are based off of where you finished. So
No, sorry, I'm gonna interrupt real quick because my comment does not matter. My comment is just they made this big deal about the Champions Cup. Everybody was gonna get at least $1,000, and I'm looking at it, and 2 women got 500, and 4 men got 250. So like they literally couldn't even give everyone $1,000. So that so ridiculous. They should pay the top and more money. Sorry, go ahead, Ratio.
No, just as far as as with that system and the paying out, I'm one that's totally for it. I was me on the drive up, to our Easter thing the other day. We were talking about why they pay so many people, and it kind of would be no different than in the MPO if you had this one division for AMs where you have a cash, like you have to make cash to a certain limit, but then that kind of really filters down. You don't really get that much money anyway if you are at the bottom cash. I'm a proponent. If we did that system, you pay maybe for the top four. You pay first, second, third, and fourth. Everyone is paying, and if there's that one division, and you're not good enough, I guess, and you have that system, and it's you're playing a tournament because you want to be competitive and you think you can compete. If you don't want to pay that and you don't think you can compete and you don't like constantly playing and not winning money, then you shouldn't be playing in the tournaments. And so if they only paid out the top, let's say 10 people, or even just the top people that scored the best, but then you also have the issue, if those people should be an MPO or whatever. But then that would take away the whole issue of cashing out. Then it would just be, this is where the scores are, and the top people that played the best are being rewarded. I think that's also with MPO. Why are you wanting to pay out to 40th place? Like, did 40th place really play great enough to deserve $1,000? I think that's cool. They're on tour and whatnot, but like they have sponsors or whatever. Like they're making money, but why are we rewarding 40, 39th, 38th when people in first and second are like 20 strokes higher? Like, the top first place was down 39. I don't know what the score was for 40th place,
18.
but 18 plus or 18 down?
18 down. There were 4 people tied at 18 down. That's why it was 250 a person. But like,
So 20 strokes
yeah,
better.
it was 21 strokes. What's the difference?
Yeah. So, I think you pay people less and you reward the top more. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's how
I
it should
mean,
be.
I think I agree. I think the top 25%, top 30%, 33%, make it even, 1/3 of the players should get paid. I think once you kind of make it like I don't know, 10 4 whatever, I think that's just not enough in my opinion. But if it was like top 33, that would have been a score of down 23, so still not great. But then more, that person, assuming all that money just goes to the top, the person who would have gotten 30th would have still been making over $1,100, and the people at the top could have made like, I don't know, closer to 17 grand, like we had talked about earlier. But hey, I think this is a good place to stop. I think we've covered a lot of good topics. Trenton, we'll get your ace round on a different episode. You'll be on again, so I'm not too worried about it. We've been going for over an hour already, and we've had a lot of heated discussions. People got to settle down. They gotta digest this. I gotta digest all this. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode. If you enjoyed, if you like episodes like this, maybe where there's a little bit more debates, maybe we're talking a little bit more about the Pro Tour, giving some opinions on disc golf overall, let us know. Hit the like button over on YouTube. Comment down below. Give us your thoughts. Those things help us structure our episodes in what content we create. So you giving your input is very helpful for what you want to see. So we do appreciate that. Make sure you leave that rating and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're at. New podcast every Monday, new YouTube video every Wednesday. We'll see you guys next week.